Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Ken Sable.
And I'm Sabine Ramsey, and welcome to The Shift.
So today we are going to be looking at the issue failure to launch. And we've got Laura with us, and she's going to go ahead and share some of those experiences.
Hello.
Welcome,
Hi,
Laura.
welcome. So Laura, would you like to share what the issues that you're having so we can get a feel for it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a filmmaker, independent filmmaker. And I would say that that's just difficult from the start, right? Because it's an incredibly challenging industry and there are so many different paths you can take and avenues within different disciplines. There's no real roadmap for how to get where you want to go. And so I had kind of started backwards. I started in post-production, was there for a number of years, and then went into film education. And so for me, during those 8 to 10 years, I was I produced several independent films, I directed several short films, web series. So then last year left the American Film Institute and have just been trying to kind of figure out the next move, because my end goal is to be directing, and it's just not the easiest thing in the world to just be a director, be a film director, a television director. Even with the amount of media that's being made now. And then obviously COVID-19 as a whole other, challenge. And so that's where I kind of find myself at the moment, just kind of not really knowing the best direction to take, the best path to go down, and kind of just having a failure to launch. That's what's happening,
So what do you envision, or what do you imagine are the obstacles that are getting in your way?
Well, I think that with this industry, a lot of it is about kind of having help, having a team, having representation as a director. And I currently don't have a manager or an agent, and just cold calling people doesn't really work. And so I have been kind of like sourcing within my network, trying to see who may know people who are looking for new directors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And why is that important to you? The how to get there, how to get to your goal?
I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. It's not knowing how to take the next step. It's not having built within the structure of like network television or a studio film, and having been on the other side in post and then in education. It's like making that jump. I mean, it's like any career jump, really. It's like, how do you get to the next level? Like who you need to have on your side to help you get there. And it's hard to know who could really be an advocate.
It's the whole knowing thing.
Yeah.
Wanting to know, but not knowing, and
yes,
with the not knowing.
Yes. And then just, the overwhelm of there just being so much. It's such a large industry. It's such a big, it's like, if you want to be a doctor, you go to medical school, you have your path. You want to be a lawyer, you go to law school. Like it's just not like that with entertainment. So it's a big challenge.
And I wonder if you can just briefly talk about what your preparation has been like so far to meet the challenge of the moment now, where you want what you want. What has been your preparation so far to meet that?
That is such a good question. Getting really clear on the goal, on a very specific goal. One of the last projects I was working on was a World War II set. It was going to be a film. I then decided to make it into a series, which is a very personal story to me about my grandmother. But trying to figure out where you can slot that in, because I am an artist, because I am a very creative person. I have a lot of different ideas. I have a lot of different things I would love to do. And so narrowing that that's the preparation that needs to happen, to really focus on like one specific goal.
Okay.
All right. So now Ken and I will talk about this subject a little bit and see what we can come up with to help you.
Great.
And then we will bring you back afterwards.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Ooh, Ken, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is.
I want to know how to do it, don't we all?
Right. And just even paying witness to where she was stuck with what particular questions, I think is an interesting place to start. As a therapist, of course, I would want to immediately begin to create what Gabor Mate calls compassionate inquiry, to have her become as curious about the subject, as curious about herself, so that she can shift from a learning perspective and a curious perspective versus a judgmental or a critical perspective. And we don't know to the extent on how much judgment or criticism she's directing towards herself. That's certainly where I like to begin. Certainly with failure to launch, one would want to explore what she may be trying to avoid, if there's procrastination, if there's a stuckness, whether that procrastination or stuckness is an attempt to avoid discomfort, to avoid what is not certain. Clearly, as I'm prone to do, I would be wanting to look deeper into core beliefs. If there is a unconscious core belief that is at play, what her relationship to failure might be, all of those beliefs and how they might be contributing to the stuckness. So that's how I would likely want to frame the beginning of the work. How about as a coach?
So yeah, as a coach, I see, especially now with COVID-19, not knowing, feeling stuck, and the story that people create in their head. Like she was saying, okay, if you want to become a doctor, you go to medical school, and then these are the steps. Well, there is a lot of choices out there as well as a doctor, I would say. So she sounded to me like she has this story that she's telling herself, well, it's really difficult in my industry, and because I don't know how. And if you keep telling yourself that story, your brain will make sure that you believe that story, because it's difficult. It's really difficult. It's more difficult than anywhere else. And so, and that will create a feeling in your body as well, where you think it's not doable anyway, because I don't know how. So you start going into resentment and giving up. And this is actually a pattern that will create suffering for yourself, because you keep on telling yourself the same story. And that's exactly why, if I would be surprised if she wasn't stuck. That's automatically the result. And then after a while, because you tell yourself that story so often, you believe it. It's the truth. It's then for yourself, this is a fact, rather than saying, like you refer to, out of curiosity, I wonder what is possible. I mean, who writes down anyway what is the perfect way? And there are people out there that made incredible, like the lady from Spanx. The way she set up her business, she broke any rule of how to set up a business, but she's super successful. So that's, you start limiting yourself by trying to find out what is the strategy, what's the how. Where you need to start off with is work on your frame of mind, your core beliefs. I believe I can do this. Don't know how, because the how is not my business. It will come. And the minute that you start opening up, then you will see different possibilities that you were blind to before.
Right. So you're really talking about the patterns of her thinking, her emotion, her behavior as a vehicle right now to solidify an old belief of who she has been. And in order for her to break that pattern, I think you're right. I think she's going to have to begin to imagine herself and what's possible, and really, really hold on to that, so that that becomes part of her consciousness, so that can get into her brain and change the old thinking. I noticed she had a lot of difficulty and some stuckness around the question of preparation. When I asked, how have you prepared yourself for the moment? I felt like she was struggling to answer that. And I think that would be a fair exploration for her to begin to step back and get some distance and ask herself whether there are things that she could be doing so to prepare her more for embarking on a challenging career that's requiring confidence, that's requiring experience, that's requiring possibly a resume that says, I've done this, I've done that. I think that certainly would be somewhere where I would explore with her as well.
And how much has she really done?
Right.
In terms of all the leg work, because I'm sure if she would say, okay, let's make a list, I've done this, 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 and this, and there are probably 50 to 100 different possibilities left.
And perhaps she has done the work, but also is there a possibility that she is avoiding doing some of the legwork that would make it more difficult to pick up the phone and reach out and call a director when maybe her resume is not as robust as it could be, which therefore would make it easier to make that kind of call.
And her belief that will limit her by thinking, oh, well, there are other people out there that are better than I am because their resume looks better than mine. No, but because if you believe that you're the best producer out there and you try to convince them, if you don't believe it yourself, they will not believe you either because they can feel it that you don't believe the words that you're saying.
Right.
So in that way, she would need to go into her body, feel where the feeling is. And I would like to refer to the different archetypes in this subject now. She would have to come in as the warrior to sell her gift as a producer and go after it or practice it for herself. I get this done. I can do this.
Right.
Because it seems at the moment she's more, it's really hard to know how to do this. Well, I'm sure most of the successful producers that are out there didn't know how to do it either. They just tried stuff. Fail your way forward is what I can say.
Yeah, she mentioned wanting to find the motivation, and motivation can often comes after we've been doing something and we've gained a little bit of success, and therefore we feel more motivation to continue. I think you're bringing up the somatic piece, which really speaks to how is her physiology? What is her physiology like? What's happening in her nervous system when she's thinking about moving forward? What's happening in her nervous system when she's talking about her career? And is she dysregulated? Could you help her to regulate her nervous system so that she has more feelings of safety and security and connection, so that when she's having to move forward or do something that's uncomfortable, she's already moving forward where her nervous system is more regulated.
Yeah.
And to work somatically with her nervous system would be half of the battle, I think.
And in a practical way, as a coach, I would ask them to, can you imagine a situation where you really felt on top of the world, that I'm the best, I got this. And you step into that body, stand up and just feel, how did that feel? And before you make that next call, you do that somatic work, you step into that body of the killer producer and then call the person and see if that feeling gets transmitted in that call as well.
Right, and even in the context of working in her body somatically, I might have her remember a time where she had confidence, or remember a time where she was successful, remember a time where she felt comfortable being in her own skin, and really allowing that memory to become a resource and to have it become integrated into her body so that she has the feeling, the memory and what that was like, both in her mind and in her body, as a source of resiliency, so that she can be more resilient moving forward in a field and at a time when uncertainty is extremely high.
And the best way to do that really is to start practicing it with little things. Step into that body when you order your Starbucks coffee. Step into the body when you, I don't know, do the dishes. Or it's those dishes that you're the best on the planet.
Or making a less intense phone call to a director, simply kind of making the mindfulness and the awareness about asking for something that you need from a friend that doesn't quite have the same stakes, but practicing being in the discomfort, practice in moving forward with uncertainty around.
And that's the beauty. The brain doesn't know the difference whether it's a big or a little thing. It's just the practice that you need to step into the body, feel the feeling, and go ask your friend like you suggested. And then after a while, it'll come natural.
Okay, so if we were to sum up here, what might be a recipe to help with failure to launch? We talked about shifting from a place of curiosity, first of all, so that she can understand that the goal is a process and it's not a destination, that she can hopefully see and make strides and recognize those strides. We talked about her gaining distance and being more in awareness so that she can make an objective and a factual assessment of whether she's prepared to the extent that she needs to be. We talked about the same awareness of getting into her body and imagining both a future self and imagining past successes so that she can have both the experience of body and mind. And we talked about the practice, the daily practice of her moving with uncertainty and with discomfort, but moving forward even in smaller tasks to make the goal to work with discomfort and uncertainty on a daily basis.
Very good. Let's see what Laura thinks. Let's bring her back and see how that landed. Hey.
Welcome back.
Hi. Thank
Hey, Laura.
you. Hey.
Okay, so what landed?
A lot of that landed. I think that, I think I struggle with an unconscious, now becoming more conscious core belief of unworthiness, that the story of the industry being really difficult. When you said that, I thought like how often I've heard that from people in my family. So it's not, they were always supportive, but like not really, because when you're like, hey, that's a really hard industry, that's not being supportive, that puts doubt in my body, and that makes me think, oh, well, is this really, can I really do this?
Right.
Is this really possible? And the comment about like creating a feeling of suffering, I've really been feeling that. I've really been like emotionally suffering, and I'm trying to kind of get my mind, body, spirit connection back on track. And I have been doing work, with regards to my nervous system and all these things. Is all things that like are in my head, and stepping into that body. That's a big one. While doing the dishes. I have to do it in the body while doing the dishes.
Right.
You heard that suffering is a choice.
Yes.
That's a big one, because the story that you're telling yourself creates that suffering.
Yes.
Change the story, change your life.
I've been sitting with the idea of like fantasy versus reality recently, because especially with my family, like it's all this, it has to be momentous. It has to be, you're going to be rich and famous. It's not that you can just succeed at something. It's that you have to be, this big deal. And both of my parents have suffered from that, and not, I think it's all the trickle down effect.
Right.
From the older generations.
Would you like it to stop and write a new story?
I would like that. Yes.
It sounds like you're talking about, correct me if this is not accurate, but it sounds like you're talking about the paradigm is either success or failure.
Yes. It's
right.
Very extreme.
Right.
And how does success look like for you, not your parents?
Success for me is, being able to support myself as a director, as a filmmaker, and be doing work that, that's the other thing, is that there's always the caveat of like, and doing this work that I'm so passionate about, and telling these stories that I think are going to need to be told and that are so impactful, which is wonderful. But also, I'm not going to walk out the door, and get $10 million to make a film when I've never directed a film before. And so the idea of the building blocks, you need to be doing smaller projects and building a reel, building your resume, more so than I have, and committing to that and saying this is a process, and you will continue to grow, and there's no deadline.
Right. Right.
And that's a big, I think that's a very, well, I think it's a very American thing of like, you know, especially, you know, film, it's like Steven Spielberg made Jaws when he was 25. You know, it's this thing of like, you lose your youth, especially as a woman, like no one wants to deal with you. So it's like, I feel like I'm trying to beat the clock, you know, before I get too old, which is terrible and unfair.
You have to rewrite your script. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, absolutely. It needs such a rewrite.
Right, but it does sound like you're speaking to the point about preparation and
Yes.
stepping back and looking perhaps more realistically than with fantasy, perhaps more realistically at what you can do starting today in terms of building preparation so that your resume, that your confidence, and that your intentions are more in alignment with that preparation.
Putting it down into more bite-sized chunks, because you have this huge goal of beating Spielberg, which is a small goal.
Right. And the fantasizing about what success and what it would look like is a good thing, because it really helps you to change the way your thoughts are inside of you, how you feel emotionally. And you want to remind yourself about those good feelings, because those are going to be a catalyst to you changing the pattern that you've been in, which is same thoughts, same emotions, same behavior that have kept you stuck. So the fantasizing about what you might imagine would be successful and great can be super helpful. And it's good to hold that in your consciousness so that it becomes part of what is possible in the future, what new you is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you so much, Laura. This was super fun and interesting and challenging also. And I hope everybody watching gained some strategies, gained some insight. And hopefully it was a benefit to hear perspectives from both a coach and as well a clinical psychologist. More episodes are on their way about many different other subjects that we think you're going to resonate with. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
If you like this conversation, please leave us a comment. And also, if you know somebody that might benefit from it, share the link with them, grab a coffee, and talk about it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.